So, with All In Texas this Saturday, one concerning question anybody has, whether they're strong defenders of AEW, whether they're casual watchers of all kinds of wrestling, the one question that a lot of people have, like I said, whether they're all defenders of AEW, casual watchers of all wrestling, AEW included, um, you know, hardcore fans of all kinds, you name it, just fans that want to watch good wrestling. One question even the defenders have to be asking, because it's more obvious than it's ever been. More obvious than it's ever been. The question obviously people have is, will creative control influence the outcome of the matches at All In? Because you see, there are certain talents that obviously have creative control. Whether Tony Khan wants to acknowledge that or not, they have creative control. They might also have creative input, not so much control, but basically, in the eyes of a lot of folks, they have enough say to where Tony Khan will make sure what they want is the final say instead of what maybe he or anybody else feels would be the better direction. And one of the biggest questions when it comes to whether or not creative control will influence the outcome of some of the matches at All In is when it comes to Mercedes and Toni. Toni Storm, Timeless Toni Storm, and Mercedes Moné. Because obviously a lot of people, I would say 90%, okay, I'll be more fair, 85% to 15% feel Mercedes is going to win. If you were to, bet the house, on who was going to win between her and Toni Storm, people would bet money on Mercedes winning. If you were to go to Vegas and basically bet on the line there, who was going to win, put the odds, on who you think was going to win, everybody would bet in the favor of Mercedes Moné. And why? Why would they bet in her favor? Because of what has been obvious since day one that she got there in AEW. And it's obvious all across the board, no matter where she's gone. The woman has creative control. And a prime example of this outside of AEW was this past March at House of Glory. I did a video on it, everybody else did a video on it, but we've never heard from the horses, and I say it with all due respect, we've never heard from the horse's mouth itself. We never heard firsthand from the individual that went through this. And there was some speculation whether or not there was any truth to it. Well, I'm going to show you something right here. This is from JD from NY206's live stream Dynamite coverage last night that he did with Jesse Shoutout Mark. This is them talking about some of the news items that came out of the, I guess you could say, pre-All-In Media Scrum news conference that Tony Khan did the other day. And this was one of the things that was brought up. You see, apparently Sean Ross Sapp was one of the first people to talk to Tony in the media in the media call, in the press conference. And the one thing he asked about him was whether or not Mercedes had creative control. And Tony basically, in his own words, said, no, she doesn't. I'm the one that has creative control. I'm the one that has final say. Even though Mercedes has gone on outlets like TMZ, which is a very prominent, outlet when it comes to, just out of the blue interviews and, news items and stuff like that, all media, all entertainment and sports. Mercedes herself went on TMZ and said, I have creative control. And Tony here is saying the opposite to Sean Ross Sapp. Now, Sean Ross Sapp obviously has maybe a bit of an interest in AEW, maybe get paid on the side. That's people's speculation. Well, Sean Ross Sapp obviously felt like JD from NY206 had no grounds in accusing Mercedes of having the power, creative control, and all that she herself has admitted she has, and others have denied she has. And like I said, back in March, something happened between him and Mercedes' team that got him removed from commentary right after intermission and all that, before Mercedes' match with Indy Hartwell. Well, again, we've never heard directly from him. We've just had some cryptic tweets and all that, kind of alluding to what occurred. Well, tonight or last night during the live stream, they were talking about the news items before talking about the show itself that came out of that pre-all-in media call and conference. And when it came to the creative control part, well, JD finally let it be known as to what really happened. And I'm going to show you in a second. Hold on.
And I hate when I'm combating on this.
So here we go. You heard him in the background. Here it is. Shout out to JD. Check out the live stream. It's going to be at about 1 minute and 29 seconds. Oh, not a minute, but 1 hour and 29 seconds. It's going to be at 89 minutes. At the 89-minute mark, 1 hour and 29 seconds, 1.29, if you will, on the 1 hour 29 second mark.
Jesse the floor after this. I hate being combated on something where I know I am right.
This is what it's going to be, and I'll show you in a second.
Old Sap, personally yesterday.
So here it is. Actually, it's at 1:28, 1 hour 28 minutes and 54 seconds. Here it is.
You have absolutely no ground.
Here it is.
I'm combated on this, and I'll give Jesse the floor after this.
Here's what he said.
I'm combated on something where I know I am right. I told Sap personally yesterday, you have absolutely no grounds to tell me I'm fucking wrong in this situation when I had to go through with what I went through in March at House of Glory when I had that fucking woman come into the fucking company and personally remove me from commentary. You're gonna tell me she doesn't have power? Fuck out of here, bro. I fucking lived through it. You're not gonna tell me fucking I'm wrong.
Okay, so you heard that, right? Now again, that's the time frame you can find it at, or where it ends. It basically goes for a little less than, I would say, 31 seconds or so, 31 seconds. But you heard it from JD himself right there. And if someone like JD, who everybody was wondering, okay, is he in the right? Is he when he finally comes out and says it, like he just did here, and I'm sure he's talked about it before, people will probably ask him questions. So with JD coming out and basically finally, I guess you could say publicly live acknowledging that it was Mercedes that had him removed. And all because what? Because he gave his opinion on Mercedes? Look, JD, Monster, Greg Morgan, A&B Convos, everybody knows that Mercedes is a great wrestler. She is. But what bothers them is she has this creative control that, again, she's even admitted herself, that basically makes them worried that every time it looks like she should be basically allowing herself to be pinned to the mat, pushing talent to the moon, let them be the one that beat her, let them be the one that become TBS champion, or whatever the case may be, or, Rev Pro champion, or Queen of Wrestling's champion, or EWA champion, that every opportunity she has to do this, she doesn't do it. Now, a lot of people were surprised, and even JD and Salamusta acknowledged this a couple of weeks ago. They did acknowledge that, yeah, she does have power, and everything, but obviously she doesn't, kind of, I guess you could say, really just abuse that control, abuse that power she has, because if she did, she would be the House of Glory champion. House of Glory Women's Champion. But Megan Bayne was the champion at that time, so obviously, I'm guessing she probably realized, hey, it wouldn't be believable, and obviously this is also why she's been avoiding facing Megan in AEW. It wouldn't be believable for her to face off against someone like Megan Bayne, knowing that not only is Megan Bayne stronger than, let's say, a Chris Statlander and potentially a Camille, but that on paper, well, not just on paper, but visually, a lot of people would firmly believe Megan Bayne would destroy her. So obviously that's why she's held off on being, let's say, the House of Glory champion. Not saying that now that Indy Hartwell has it, not saying that Mercedes won't come back and say, hey, I want that belt now, because there's a good chance she will, since it's on somebody that she could look at as being beatable. And if what JD is saying, here is true, and it's coming from his own mouth himself, his own voice, if that is definitely true, 100%, and I believe it is, for her to have the power to have him removed, this is what worries people about Saturday. And what worries them is people like Mercedes Moné will have the power to say, I want to be double champion in AEW. I want to be Tony Storm. And the same goes with Jon Moxley and Hangman Page. They're afraid Moxley's going to influence to go over on Page and everything. And nobody wants that. So on and so forth. Some may even say that MJF, even though he may not have creative control, he has creative input, they may say MJF is going to go over in the Casino Gauntlet. And that might happen. Same with the Hurt Syndicate. People would say three-way dance for the tag team titles doesn't favor the Hurt Syndicate, but they might tell Tony, nah, we don't want to look weak, or we don't want to look equal. We want to still look dominant. So we're going to go in. So we want to go in there and we just want to destroy the teams. That's what worries people about this upcoming event. It's not the fact that the event won't be good from a wrestling standpoint. What worries them is the fact that creative control could have a huge influence on the outcome of some of these matches, and they don't want that. Tony Khan says he has creative control. Well, guess what? He now has the opportunity to prove that come All In. So if I'm Tony Khan and I want to prove I have the final say, then I look at the match between Mercedes. I look at the match between Mercedes and Tony Storm. I look at the match between Jon Moxley and Hangman Page, and some of the other matches where creative control could play an influence. And I'm going to say, you know what? I'm the boss. I'm taking charge now. Mercedes, you're losing to Tony Storm, or Mercedes, Tony, you're going to a draw. That way, both retain title. That way, no championship changes hand. Both, can build to a rematch. He could say to Moxley, your Death Rider thing ends with you losing to Page, and now we're going to move on to something else. This is an opportunity to prove he is the one with the final say. He is the one with the final say. But when you have people like JD here coming out and in his own words, ladies and gentlemen, saying, when you have someone like JD here in his own words, coming out and saying exactly how influential, how powerful, how much creative control someone like Mercedes Moné has, not just within AEW, but outside of it, because he experienced it with his own, experienced it for himself. When you have someone like him saying that, then that right there is why folks are worried. Now, again, I mentioned earlier that, she didn't go after the House of Glory Women's Championship when Megan Bayne had it, but when Megan Bayne became fully committed to AEW and other outside promotions, they stripped her of the belt and they awarded it to whoever won between Indy and Muir, I think. I'm sorry if I pronounced her name wrong, but they awarded it to the winner of that, and Indy won. Indy became champion. And what's crazy is now that worries a lot of folks, that Indy could be the next on Mercedes' hit list to want a rematch with her, but this time for the House of Glory Women's Championship. And that's why people feel that when you have people like Tony Khan and even some fans and insiders like Sean Ross Sapp and Dave Meltzer, Mike Johnson coming out and saying, oh, Mercedes doesn't have that kind of control, let me ask you this. If she doesn't have that kind of control, why wasn't this guy on commentary for her match with Indy Hartwell? And why in his own words, as you heard earlier, why in his own words did he acknowledge she was the reason he wasn't there? I'm just saying. So, to me, if Tony Khan doesn't want controversy to follow what is potentially going to be a very good wrestling show overall in Arlington, a Globe Field. If he doesn't want, basically controversy to follow that, especially with certain matches, he needs to put his foot down during that event. He needs to tell Mercedes, look, I know you don't want to lose, but I don't want Tony to lose. We're going to put you at a draw or a double pin. And then the same with Moxie. He's like, hey, I know you feel like you're trying to send a message with this Death Riders thing, but this needs to end. We need to move on and all that. So you're going to lose the page. And then go from there. He needs to put his foot down here. He needs to put his foot down here. Playtime is over. Being friends, being buddy, it's over. Time to put that aside and become a boss. And those men and women that he's being kind and sweethearty and all that to, if they don't like it, then guess what? As the WWE used to use as a slogan back in the early 2000s when they changed, when they removed one letter for another one, if they don't like it, then they can get the F out of AEW. And that's a fact. They can get the F out of All Elite Wrestling. But Tony has an opportunity here to prove he is everything he says he is. Prove he's not lying. Prove he's not, exaggerating. Prove he's not making shit up. He has the opportunity here to prove to the world that he is the boss and that he does have final say, from when it comes to creative control. And if he doesn't show that, and Mercedes walks out with the Women's World Title, and she has 7 belts, 7 belts, 6 of them she actually defends, but 7 altogether, that's going to cause controversy. That's going to cause the controversy, that's going to cause the accusation of her having creative control. It's going to cause it to become more notable. It's going to cause it to become more of a talking point, more of a reason why people do not want to tune into AEW, because they would see someone like her, they would see someone like Moxley and be like, why are we even watching? We know what the outcome's going to be. So Tony needs to step up and show he's the one that has the final say. And if not, then even though it might be a good show, it's going to have controversy to it. It's going to have some massive, massive controversy, and he knows it. And again, if you don't believe me, let me go back to it. Right here. Listen to this.
I hate being combative.
Listen to this.
Where I know I am right. I told Sap personally yesterday, you have absolutely no grounds to tell me I'm fucking wrong in this situation when I had to go through with what I went through in March at House of Glory, when I had that fucking woman come into the fucking company and personally remove me from commentary. You're gonna tell me she doesn't have power? Fuck out of here, bro. I fucking lived through it. You're not gonna tell me fucking I'm wrong.
So,
So there you go. Again, from his own words. This is what worries people. So all Tony Khan needs to do to prove everybody is wrong about that, to prove JD wrong, to prove Jesse, Chi-Town Mark wrong, Solomonster, Good Mic Work, A&V Convos, everyone wrong that feels and sees it with their own eyes. Even the AEW sickos and diehards that support the company, they see it with their own eyes, and it's the one thing they hate about the company, whether they want to admit it or not. It's the one thing they disdain about it. It's like with them, in my opinion, they love 90% of the company. The 10% they don't like is crap like what Mercedes is doing, crap like what Moxie's doing creatively. They do not like it. They do not like it. And if Tony wants those sickos, those diehards, to be 100% behind the company and enjoying everything they see, he needs to take control this Saturday. And again, whether or not the people that he's given this control to like it or not, and he takes that control away from them just for one day to shut everybody up, whether they like it or not, then again they could do what everybody used to say about they could utilize that slogan WWE used to have back in 2002. They can get the F out of AEW if they don't like it. So Tony Khan, he needs to step up this Saturday. Because even though the show at 5 hours or so might be good wrestling-wise, it's going to get overshadowed by Saturday Night's Main Event. It's going to get overshadowed by Evolution and Great American Bash. Because those shows are going to have less controversy, if any controversy at all. It may not have, those three may not have none. But they will have less controversy and negativity thrown to them, based on what they're presenting in the ring, storyline-wise and in ring-wise, they will have less, negativity thrown to them, over, All In, over AEW All In, if Tony Khan doesn't step up and show he is the boss and that he has the true final say when it comes to creative control. Again, wrestling-wise, it might be great. The show's going to be great. There's no doubt. But what's going to overshadow it and what's going to put people more in the favor of Evolution, Great American Bash, and Saturday Night's Main Event is if he allows Mercedes, Moxley, anybody else that has that creative control, not just input, but creative control, despite what he and others say, if he allows them to, allow their control to influence the outcome of their matches in the event overall. But that's all I'm going to say on this. Shout out to JD from NY206. Again, check it out. You can find it at the 1 hour, 88 minute, 44 second mark on the live stream. Again, check it out. It's good to hear that he is finally acknowledging what happened and all that, even though I think a lot of us pretty much knew that from the start. We just needed evidence and all the cryptic tweets and all that. We finally get it. We finally get the evidence we were looking for. And all I could say is, again, Tony Khan needs to step up this Saturday. And whether Mercedes likes it, whether Moxley likes it, or anybody else likes it or not, he needs to prove he is the boss. Tony Khan needs to prove he's the boss. He has the final say creatively. And if that means Mercedes goes down, Mox goes down, the Hurt Syndicate goes down, so be it. If that means the patriarchy breaks up and we finally get Christian and Edge together as a tag team, so be it. He has to step up, prove he's the boss, because if he doesn't, despite the show having some great wrestling, what's going to overshadow it is the controversy that will basically be following it by people acknowledging the creative control that influenced the outcome of certain matches. So he needs to step up and prove he's a boss, and he is truly in charge and has the final say creatively. But that's all I'm going to say, guys. And again, shout out to JD and all that. Again, check out his live stream from last night. Again, go to the 1 hour, 28 minute, 44 second mark. You will find him acknowledging what happened back in March of this year with Mercedes at House of Glory. But guys, that's all I'm going to say. And until next time, like the video, ring the bell for notification, subscribe to the channel, click on the links in the description to find my content elsewhere outside of YouTube, as well as click on the Teespring store link at the bottom to find merchandise you can't get anywhere else. And until next time, guys, I will talk to y'all later. But yeah, those are just my thoughts. And let's pray and hope Tony steps up and becomes a boss and shows that he truly has the final say creatively in what takes place in the ring at All In.